Have you heard about Global Poker? Global Poker is the fastest growing card room in the US today, and it's available online at globalpoker.com. Global Poker is a social poker site that offers safe and secure cash out options by using their unique and patented sweepstakes model. Players can compete in big guaranteed tournaments, jackpot sit and goes, or cash games featuring Hold'em, Omaha, and even Crazy Pineapple. Don't wait. Check out Global Poker today.
Poker Stories is an audio series that features casual interviews with some of the game's best players and personalities. Each episode highlights a well-known figure in the poker world and dives deep into their favorite tales both on and off the feld.
Hello and welcome to Poker Stories, a podcast brought to you by Card Player, the Poker Authority, and hosted by me, Julio Rodriguez. This is episode number 97, and it features Daniel Dvoress. Now, if you are asking yourself, why does that name sound so familiar? It's because Daniel just won himself his first WSOP bracelet, along with $1.5 million for topping a field of 6,299 entries in the 2020 online Millionaire Maker. Daniel originally got his start playing online cash, but about 5 years ago he made the switch to live tournaments. After he started following the high roller circuit, his results really began to stack up. 19 of his top 20 scores have come in tournaments with a buy-in of $25,000 or more. And last November, Daniel took down the Super High Roller Bowl in the Bahamas for $4.1 million. He now has $17.2 million in career tournament earnings, which is good for number 5 on Canada's all-time money list. That's enough intro. Here is my conversation with Daniel Dvoress. I am here with Daniel Dvoress. Daniel, how are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me on.
This is a great time to have you on because you are a recent World Series of Poker bracelet winner. So I imagine you feel 10 feet tall these days, right?
Like almost double my height, right?
Exactly. I want to go back to the beginning and talk about your life and how you found yourself into this crazy game we all love. So you grew up in Russia. Where in Russia?
So I was born in Moscow, and my parents moved when I was 8 in 1996. So I had a little bit of a childhood in Russia, but I was homeschooled, so maybe a little bit less than a normal childhood.
Right.
And
what do you remember? Like, is it just a blur or what you can piece together from pictures?
It's kind of a blur, and then there's memories of memories. I remember, I just remember spending summers at my grandparents' place, a little bit outside of Moscow. I remember, sometimes spent with friends, but I don't really have any particularly fond memories. And actually, I think my memory of my childhood is just kind of bad compared to the average memory of a childhood.
Because of hardships or just because of, a language barrier when you get to Canada and, the difficulty there?
I think, kind of all of the above. The language barrier was a little bit difficult, but my mom spoke English, so she taught me at home at least a little bit, so it wasn't this complete shock. But of course, moving from one country to another where everything's foreign, and then I didn't have any experience going to school, so it was all kind of a lot at once.
Mm. Now, other than the language, which obviously you're going to be behind at, did you find that homeschooling made you more advanced than the kids your age or behind?
I think in everything, well, maybe not everything, but in math in particular, I think I was way ahead. I think I just have kind of my parents to thank for that. They did a good job homeschooling me.
The universal language of math.
Right, yeah. Because I remember I think when I came to Canada when I was 8, I was already doing some like simple forms of algebra, stuff that like we wouldn't get to school for a few years. But I actually think that even if I did go to school in Russia, I would have been exposed to kind of the same level of math. I think math in particular, the education there is a little bit ahead, and you start things younger. And then science too. I think I was kind of a little bit ahead of the kids, but anything that depended on English for the first couple of years, I was behind for sure.
So you grew up more technically minded, I guess. Is that true of your poker game?
That's true of my poker game too, I think. Yeah. And yeah, for sure, there was a huge emphasis in my childhood on technical stuff. Yeah.
But before we get off Russia, what's the craziest Russian memory you have?
Um,
Or the biggest culture shock, I guess, having grown up?
I don't know if there's any culture shocks. I think that looking back on it, just the contrast between like what I thought was normal there to what I would think is normal as a kid in Canada was just like very different. Just in terms of some of the hardships that people go through. I didn't really like think very much on it, but one of the friends that I was pretty close friends with growing up, at least like as far as like friendships when you're 8 years old go, like he ended up dying in his adolescence, and it was like not that abnormal, which like looking back on it, like that seems insane. Like I think that if I grew up in Canada, like in a normal way, and I had like a friend die when I was like in early adolescence or when I was like 10 or something, that would be like really messed up, and I think most people like don't go through that experience. But I think that, in that context, it was like, yeah, like that happened. So yeah, in that sort of sense, there was a huge difference. Yeah.
Yeah, that happens in the Western world, and they immediately dispatch like grief counselors to the school because of how much of a rarity it is. So yeah, for it to be normalized, that's got to be disturbing. You're in high school in Toronto,
right?
and,
Yeah.
You know, you're obviously the most popular kid in school, the prom king, the star of the football team, but you're also playing poker, right, on the side, just beating these kids out of their money.
Yeah, so I was, of course, like everything but like the most popular kid in school. Like I think I did okay for like in like popularity wise. I think I did okay for like a nerdy kid. But yeah, I wasn't like one of the like star athletes or anything. But
You have that qualifier. I mean, if you'd be going to school today, you might be the most popular kid. Now, who's the most popular kids in high school? The members of the Glee Club?
well, like looking back on it, like I'm so glad I wasn't one of the popular kids in high school, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like at the time, that's what every teenager like aspires, or at least in part aspires to be. But yeah, there was like a daily lunch cafeteria game that I would routinely crush for like $6 like every day. But like back then to me, I was like, oh my god, I'm making like $5 to $10 every day during my lunch hour. This is great. So that's kind of how the roots of poker started for me.
And mom and dad love this?
uh, so yeah, my parents are like at the time when I first started, when they found out that I was playing poker, obviously I didn't tell them. It was like gambling was just like not something that was like cool to do within the family at all. And like generally, I think, of course, like by a lot of parents, it's just like considered a pretty bad thing to get into, particularly if you're in your teens. So my parents didn't find out for a little bit, and then when they did find out I was playing poker, like they kind of made me quit. So there was like a stretch of almost a year where I kind of started, I evolved from the cafeteria high school game, and I opened an online account and sort of kind of started grinding it up, making a little bit of money. And then my parents found out, and then I had to quit. And then there was like a little bit of a stretch where I didn't play, and then of course I started playing again.
Yeah, it comes calling to you like the sirens. So you're in college, you're studying math, I'm guessing.
Uh, yeah, I was doing math and psych.
Okay. So, you know, got to get that degree, right? Was that the priority, or was it no? Let's fire up online poker.
So the way I was brought up, like it wasn't even like any alternative other than like going to university and getting a good degree was like not even a possibility, right?
Yeah.
So especially at the beginning, I wouldn't even picture any other sort of outcome. It was just like kind of the thing that I was expected slash supposed to do. So I didn't actually give it much thought. I was just like, well, yeah, I got to get this degree, but also I'm playing a lot of poker. But over time, I sort of started to shift away from that mindset. And, uh, I'd say like third year or so, education took more of like a little bit of a backseat, and I started focusing more on poker.
So, at the time, you were just playing cash and sit and goes, or
Yeah, I didn't really start playing tournaments until probably like 2013 or something like that.
yeah, that's it's interesting to me. Did you find it was just an easier path for you that way, or was it a matter of being able to set your own hours and not having to, live by the schedule?
So I think in part what it was that I could kind of play whenever, and this like especially when I was playing like in between classes,
You
I'd
got to
have
hide it
like
from mom and dad.
yeah, it's just like way easier to like load up some cash tables on a laptop and play when you have an hour in between lectures or whatever.
No,
Uh,
mom, don't unplug the computer. I'm at a final table.
right, yeah, like how do you manage that? So in part it was that, and then also I think at the time, like no one would have ever imagined that tournaments would get this huge, and it also seemed like everyone that was really good gravitated towards cash games. So I was always part of what drew me to poker was always kind of there was always like this academic reason to play poker almost, and to get really good and to seek out competition. And yeah, at the time, like MTTs were just like a thing that are like pretty soft. They're there, but if you really want to if you want to grind out a lot of money and get to a really high level, cash is where you would go. So that's why I gravitated towards cash at the time.
Now, you do happen to be very successful in tournaments. You're number 5 on Canada's all-time money list, but all of that has come basically in the last 4 to 5 years. What made you make the transition?
So over time, I realized. I mean, there were a lot of factors. I guess the primary factor is just high stakes games became more of a thing in tournaments, and I was at a point in my career where playing, like higher stakes consistently was important. But there were like other factors as well. Like returning to kind of like the academic aspect of poker, I actually realized that MTTs were like a much more complex form of poker compared to cash, where everyone's always at the same stack depth. All the stack configurations are always the same. There's no ICM. So MTTs were a more complex game, and that was really appealing for me.
Right,
And
the variables just
yeah,
you
like
just don't see in a cash game setting.
right, exactly. So to play MTTs well is actually a much harder thing to execute than to play cash games well, just because there's so many potential situations that you can be in. And also, like another small factor that went into it was that by during the time that I was transitioning to MTTs, the climate of online high stakes cash games was pretty unhealthy. I would say there was a lot of pretty like predatory behavior. games would run around certain individuals and then like instantly break up. So I think that there's some ethical issues with that, and also just some like it just felt a little bit icky to kind of like sit around, stare at the high stakes lobby all day, hope that like someone weak sits and then play. Whereas with like MTTs, there's none of that. So that was an aspect that really drew me to tournaments as well.
Right, the tournament is democratic. Anyone can just pony up the buy-in and sit down. So you never did any bum hunting back in your cash days?
I think everyone did. I would be wrong to say that like for sure when I moved, especially from like for me the transition from 1-2 to 5-10 happened really quickly. I was basically I was getting coached at the time, and the person that was coaching me was just like, yeah, you're playing 1-2, but you're a little bit of a bankroll nit, and also you're good enough to play like 5-10. Why don't you just go play 5-10? So obviously, like 5xing the stakes that I was playing almost overnight, led me to being really selective about the games that I did play. But within a pretty short period of time, this would have been like 2011 or so. Within a pretty short period of time, I was a mass stabler at the time, so I would just play kind of all the 5-10 games that were running on stars. But certainly, as I was moving up the stakes, especially when I had to be careful with bankroll, I was definitely selective about the games that I would play. Yeah.
So it's funny you bring up that you kind of had to be nudged into the bigger game, because don't you have a similar story as to how you got into the high rollers?
Yeah, I was just always very, very, I guess paranoid's a bit too strong of a word, but I guess it kind of fits. Like I was always paranoid about over evaluating my own skill level, both in cash and then later in tournaments. And I also really, really don't like to potentially be in a situation where I'm gambling without an edge. Like that just feels really, really icky to me. So yeah, in both situations, I just needed a little bit of a nudge, and to have someone be like, "Hey, you should be playing these high rollers, or you should be
it
playing
was
the high
Chidwick,
stakes."
right? Was it Stevie Chidwick who told you, "Hey, what are you doing? Get off the rail and get in here"?
Yeah, he was definitely. Yeah, I remember having a conversation with him. I guess it would have been circa 8 years ago or so, where we were playing a lot of the same games online, and I think the biggest tournaments that ran at the time regularly live were 25Ks, and he's like, "Hey, at this next stop, are you playing this 25K?" And I'm like, "What? I can't do that." And then he was like, "No, you should probably play. Like you'll be fine." So yeah, thanks, Stevie. Thanks for giving me the nudge, right?
Yeah, you mentioned obviously a little bit of a bankroll nit coming up. Is that mostly to do with your upbringing and immigrant parents who came over with very little?
For sure, yeah. That was a part of it, and it also just seemed like the more professional thing to do. Especially once I realized that I would try to make a career out of poker. It just made sense to do it right.
What about your attitude towards money these days? I mean, they say to get to the top, you have to have a healthy disregard for the value of money. But I've seen a few examples of players who don't really lose that and yet can still pull the trigger when it comes time to a big decision.
So I think it's important to differentiate between just being really spewy with money in general and being able to make the logically correct decision when there's a lot of it on the line. They're very distinct things. Being able to potentially like bluff off or call off for like hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity is like, at least for me, a completely distinct thing from being like, I won a tournament, let's like buy a Lamborghini. Like completely different things, right? So yeah, one you kind of have to approach academically, and then the other, I think it's just from my upbringing, I'm generally like less spewy and a little bit more frugal when it comes to non-poker things.
Well, does it ever pop into your head while you're playing? Yeah, this is you know worth a Kia, or is it like just a matter of that doesn't come into play until you check the bank account later?
No, that doesn't come in. Like, I don't think those things for myself, but I definitely think about how thoughts like that can affect how others play.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I'm always super rational about it. But if I know that a particular like pay jump is really big for someone, or yeah, like let's say I know that they're looking to get like third place money, or just like looking to fold into ladder, then strategically that just has an impact because I'm looking to exploit some tendencies. But it's never something that I apply to myself. No.
It's interesting you brought up the ICM situation. When we talked to you back in January for the cover that you were on, you did say that one of the things you had been working on was your ICM game, and obviously it's paid off this summer. Did you see anything noticeable when you were doing that work, or was it just a matter of tweaking some small issues here and there?
I think it was. I think it was mostly just like tweaking and also understanding. Like, I think a lot of the time that people do ICM work, they just kind of like look at the outputs and like try to memorize them. But for me, I would always try to like figure out what potential exploits or like super exploits there are. So like there's a difference between just like looking at ICM outputs and being like, hey, okay, this is how a computer would play this spot, versus then going one level deeper and making adjustments to potential calling ranges or shoving ranges, and seeing what the exploits are. And those are always you can never do too many of those.
Well, I want to get into your successes on the live circuit, but I only bring up the ICM issue because before we get to your two big marquee wins, you did have a long series of big scores that were in the second place, third place, fourth place range. I'm wondering which one of those was the most painful.
um yeah, I mean, I don't think that any were too painful, really. I Yeah, like the times that I would come second or third, in pretty much all of those spots, I'd get heads up. Well, I think in a couple of spots maybe I got heads up as a chip leader, but you're always playing essentially like a turbo or a hyper turbo heads up sit and go for the win. And I've played loads of those online during my career, so I always felt comfortable heads up, but I also knew that there's a ton of variance involved. So, things didn't go my way for a while, like shorthanded at final tables. But I was fine with that. Like, I don't think, yeah, nothing comes to mind where I was like disappointed with how I played, which for me would be the main thing.
Well, that's a very mature way to handle. I mean, obviously, any of us looking on the outside, we're going, of course he's not going to complain. He cashed for 700 grand, whatever it was. But when first place is 2 million, some people can't help but see what was left on the table.
Right.
Speaking of leaving nothing on the table, last November, you go down to the Bahamas and you take down the Super High Roller Bowl for $4 million. Is that life-changing at all? Or is it just put it on the pile?
I mean, it's obviously great to win a tournament like that. Yeah, I don't think it was like a spot where my life changed overnight or anything like that, but it was definitely nice to get the win for sure. And it was also like kind of funny that that's like the first tournament that I ever ended up winning.
Well, you had a couple of wins here and there, but yeah, that was the first marquee one.
I actually the only win that I had before then was this like fake tournament that ran in the Bahamas as like this like added 25K, which ended up getting like 6 players. I think that was like the only live tournament that I had won before then. But yeah, of course, online's different, and I had some wins before.
Well, let's talk about, you obviously did say that the money is important to you. You have those parental ideals in the back of your head, not to go spew the bankroll. But what about the prestige of poker? In tournaments, you do have that element where you are the last man standing. They give you a trophy. They take your picture. There's a public record of it online. Anybody can go and see you won that tournament for all time. Whereas in cash game, you just go home and no one even knows that how much of a stud you are.
That's true, yeah. But even in tournaments, I would say that for me, the most important thing would be consistency over a long stretch of time. Like it's definitely great to get a win, but I think that I would, I guess if there was, well, the example that I was going to give was like a stretch of like 5 years where I just like cash for infinite every year, but never win would even be better than getting like a win here and there and then nothing else. But then that would also be kind of weird, I guess. But yeah, for me,
you'd
like,
want to go do some ICM work if that was the case.
for sure, right? But yeah, I mean, nice to get the win, but also consistently performing and being up at the top would be equally as important for me as well.
Did you feel in that tournament that you did play your best? Or are you kind of like downplaying the variance because maybe there was a spot or two where the cards treated you better than they should have?
In Bahamas, you mean?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, in Bahamas, I thought I played really, really well. Yeah, but I also think that I've played equally well in other tournaments that I didn't win as well. That's just how it goes sometimes. But I was definitely very happy with how I played in the Bahamas.
All right, let's get to your next win. Well, actually, you did win a tournament immediately after that in the Bahamas again. But let's fast forward to, what was it, a week ago? Has it been more than a week yet?
I guess not even, right? Or about a week.
So we're talking about the Millionaire Maker World Series of Poker Online 2020, $1,500 buy-in. How many people were in this thing?
Like 6,000 or something.
6,299, and you take it down for a $1.5 million payday and your first bracelet. Now, how is that feeling different? It's online. It's not against 5 people. I mean, 50 people. It's against thousands.
Yeah, it's definitely very different compared to the regular tournaments that I play consistently. I've had some deep runs in like main events live, but not a result like that. It's funny because it's obviously a lot. No matter how good the field is, winning a tournament with 6,000 players in it is going to be more difficult than winning a really, really tough 50-player tournament. But at the same time, your relative edge, especially when deep in the tournaments, obviously going to be bigger in a softer field. So it was just very different from what I was used to, and yeah, it didn't really. Yeah, it feels different. That's for sure.
Is it possible to say which one you're more proud of? I mean, it's really funny to look at your top 2 scores: 4,250K buy-in, 1.5 million, $1,500 buy-in. I mean, you couldn't get 2 more drastically different buy-in levels and field.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And venues.
Right. Yeah.
I'm guessing you may have had to sell action in one and not the other. You know what I mean?
I guess
that might factor into it.
Can I just say, like, yeah, I'm just glad I have both, I guess. It's really hard. Like, they're not really comparable, right? Like, the Millionaire Maker was more like winning, like, a Sunday Million or something, but, like, for 8 times the stakes or whatever it is.
Congratulations, by the way, on becoming a millionaire.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
That tournament, oh, it always lives up to its name. Oh, that's funny. Okay, so have you gotten the bracelet yet? Has it arrived in the mail?
I haven't yet. No.
Do you
I'm
have
actually.
a? Sorry, I always ask people where do you keep your bracelet? Do you have like a spot picked out or like a where somewhere to hang it, display it?
I haven't thought about that. Yeah, I don't know. What do people normally do?
Man, I've heard everything from it's in a drawer, it's in a box in my drawer, it's under the bed somewhere. I lost it. You'd be surprised how many people lost their bracelets. Some people gave them away to family. Some people do have like a trophy case, where they have all their stuff. But I think only one person ever said they wore it. So as
Yeah, I
long
mean,
as you don't do that.
yeah, I'm not gonna wear it. No. I'd probably be the guy that like keeps it in a closet, like in a box, and then I like kind of know where it is, but not really.
You could do the
See,
Peter Skate and just like sell it, just sell it immediately.
yeah, I probably won't do that.
Yeah. So you see, you do have a little bit of the prestige in you. You do like a little bit of the glory.
Well, yeah, I guess everyone does, right?
All right, let's keep going here. You are a run it once coach. I'm wondering, is there anything you hold back just for yourself when you're coaching?
I wouldn't. I would say that I tend to pick topics where I don't have to. I've always been
Mm.
pretty good at doing that. So for me, my approach to the sort of videos that I make and the sort of topics that I cover is that I dive into the theory side of things. And when I do that, then I don't hold anything back. I just say things as they are. I think that if I were to make videos on exploiting exploiting particular players, I would actually have to hold back just ethically,
Mm.
which is also why I don't make videos like that. I tend to play in pretty small player pools. I think it's like not okay to be like, hey, this is how you exploit this guy, and tell it to everyone else that plays against them.
But what about
Uh,
with friends? You're on break. You notice something about a particular player that's not at your table. Do you tell a buddy, "Hey, look out for X, Y, and Z"?
with friends, like there's a few guys that I'll hold nothing back. But I think yeah, there's like a short list of people that I'm willing to share everything with, and it would obviously have to go both ways.
And also, how much of that information do you even possess? I mean, like obviously you have a history of playing hands with the same 60 to 80 people over and over and over again. But how much of that do you do you take stock in, or are these guys just there's no tells to be picked up? There's no betting patterns, or would we be surprised by how much you do have?
I think I think you would be in part surprised, but also at the same time, it would be like the things that you tend to have on good opponents at a high level. They are pretty probabilistic in nature. So I would say that everyone has a lot on everyone, but it's not right all of the time.
All right, let's
So
start. Let's start with Eric Seidel. What's his? All
yeah, he
right.
just has this weird twitch with.
Have you ever seen that guy eat an Oreo? All right. Let's see here. I have some rapid fire questions to close it out if you're ready to go.
Sure.
Let's see.
Are
Okay,
there
so
rules to this, or you just
no, and you don't have to go fast either. No one ever does. It's just a bunch of questions.
okay?
I stalked your Instagram a bit, and I see that you're like a real man. It's something that is not a trait shared by a lot of the high stakes poker community. um, but yeah, you're a hunter, you're a fisherman. Some could say a survivalist. How did this come about?
It's just something I grew up doing. I just one of the things that I do remember from Russia is just nature trips and like hiking trips and hunting trips and fishing trips, starting from when I was like 5 years old, probably. So it's just something that's always stuck with me. I find being outside doing anything very, very meditative, and it's a way for myself to provide balance to my life as well. So yeah, that it's just something that I've been doing as a kid, and I think it's a really good thing to do in contrast to, an academic technical thing.
Yeah, so that's why all your friends call you the hunter, huh?
Well, I mean, I guess that's just like my star screen name, and that was the reason for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were just into this as a hobby or if it was spurred by some uh, belief in the end times coming. I don't know if you've been watching the news or not, and that has made you pack a little heavier these days.
Yeah, I think I'm automatically like better prepared for really bad times than most people. But no, it wasn't the current situation sparked that or anything. It's just something that I've always been into.
I just picture a scenario where they line up all the survivors, and they say, "Hey, you, what did you do in the before times?" And you're like, "I was an online poker player," but I can handle myself with a rifle as well.
Yeah, I mean, if your answer just stopped at online poker player, then your odds just really
Like,
decreased really quickly.
get in the kitchen, make us a stew of whatever you can find. All right, let's move on. Let's see here. The biggest pot you've ever won or lost. Your choice.
Oh,
How big did you get when you're playing cash? I know you're playing like 25, 50 and
um, I've played bigger live. I played a 10, 25, 50, 100 straddle game. So it would have to be in that game, but I actually
those
don't.
four blind games.
Yeah, the four blind, which actually, by the way, is just like if you run a game like this, stop and don't run a multi-blind game. Run a game with antes instead. That's a little bit of a tangent, but it's they're actually those multi-blind games are not that good for encouraging the things that they want to encourage structure-wise. But anyway, to get back to answering the question, I actually don't know. It would have to be in that game, but nothing really comes up.
All right, what about your largest non-poker wager? I know you said that you were attracted to the academics of poker, but there had to have been a degen bet somewhere.
I've made like bets with friends on like juice free on the outcome of sports games, but they've all been like under 1K probably.
This guy doesn't take bad spots. He's not a mark.
There's not like any huge degen bets that I've made for no reason. No.
Okay, what about the best swap or piece you've ever had of anybody? Who's come through?
I mean, like so many people. I don't even know. I don't even know where to start. Right. So, I'll just not answer that one because I think that there's probably like 5 people or something that are in close contention.
All right. Have you paid out more than you've gotten in swaps? Are you ahead or behind?
Hard to say. I think I'm actually pretty close to even.
That's good. You don't want to be too ahead one way or the other.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's so hard to say, right? Because, it's just like over the years, who knows? But my internal calculator says that I'm pretty close to even.
Probably best if you didn't do the math on that one.
Yeah, no, like
you're going to be upset either way. You're either going to be upset at your friends or upset at yourself. All right. Who's the best player we've never heard of?
The best player we've never heard of.
Do you have a buddy who doesn't get the respect he should?
I feel like nowadays everyone's like heard of everyone. Like I think if you go back 2 or 3 years, there were guys like, Linus was under the radar, some other high stakes guys as well. Um, Maybe not 2 or 3 years ago, but if you go back like 5 years, I think, True Teller was very private and his identity wasn't really known for quite a while. Uh, but I think in 2020, there is just like no one knows anything about that is good and plays high stakes.
Everyone is found out. Let's see.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of like the natural thing that happens since a lot of high stakes has moved to live, so it's kind of you're playing with a physical person, and online has high stakes has moved to or is starting to shift towards real names as well. So
yeah, how do you feel about the real name situation?
I mean, I think it's good. I think that it matters less at the highest stakes because, like, at nosebleeds, everyone knows everyone anyway, and it doesn't matter that much. But I think that for let's say like the $5,000 or $10,000 price point, it's really good, because there's often you're playing tournaments where prize pools are like $3, $4, $5 million. For you're literally playing for like seven figures up top, and it's nice knowing like who you're actually playing against, and that you are playing against a real person.
Yeah, not a group of people.
Right.
Let's see here. What was did you even have a job before poker? I don't know if you had enough time to take a real job, and if not for poker, what would you be doing?
I didn't really have a job before poker. Like, I think I had like a very brief period where I did like telephone surveys when I was like 17 or something. Yeah.
That does not sound fun.
No, it wasn't. It motivated me to get really good at poker. Let's put it that way. But other than that, no. I haven't done anything outside of poker. And if I had a job nowadays, I mean, it's so tough to say, right? Where life kind of would have taken me. I think that likely I would have been doing something like something technical or something academic. I guess I would have missed I guess I kind of would have missed the train on doing anything in the computer science field because of the like the degree that I went into, but maybe I would have done something in the sciences. And yeah, nowadays, if I were to start doing something outside of poker, it would almost certainly be related to doing something outdoors.
That's about to say, like, your second career, you need to be like leading expeditions into the deepest parts of the Amazon.
Yeah, that's actually potentially not for the first like very near future, just because I love poker too much and I want to keep playing, and to keep playing high stakes consistently, it's just important to put a bunch of hours in. But in
strong Wi-Fi connection too.
Right. But in the maybe more distant future, something like that would definitely be really appealing. Something that's not necessarily like financially super lucrative, but something that lets me get outside and improve other people's lives.
All right. Do you have a celebrity doppelganger, or growing up, did people tell you look like somebody?
Growing yeah, in high school, I went through a phase where I had an afro, and
what? Hold on. You had an afro? Hold on. That's you. Okay, that's on your Instagram, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's you. I assume that was a picture of somebody else entirely.
No, that was me. Like, that's just what I. Yeah, I had a phase. I have like very curly. I have like a Jufro going on, and if you pick it, it like gets like real afro-y.
That is large.
So
that's
it's like
10-inch fro.
Yeah, so it's like the thing you do when you're 17 or whatever. So before it got like really, really fluffy, uh, some people would call me Screech, like from Saved by the Bell.
Dustin Diamond.
Yeah. I guess like not the most endearing nickname to have.
It's not great. It's not great. And you know what? When Dustin was younger and he had the big hair as well, I could see it. Now seeing him in his prison outfit, I'm not seeing a resemblance. Wow, Dustin Diamond looks weird today, guys. Shaved head, all grayed out, with the beard. I think you wouldn't recognize him. But yeah, I could see Screech back in the day. Were you a big Saved by the Bell fan?
I mean,
that was after your time. What am I talking about?
no,
You're too young for Saved by the Bell, right?
no, I remember watching some, but like just reruns or whatever. But yeah, I watched a little bit, but I wasn't like a big fan. But I knew who Screech was for sure.
Do you have a favorite album?
No, because it just like it's just so mood dependent what I want to listen to.
Okay. Do you have a couple you'd like to shout out? Favorite band? Favorite artist?
As far as bands go, I think like rock from the 70s would be my go-to, but most of the time I'm listening to music with no lyrics. Pretty heavily into like various forms of techno. What I listen to specifically just really depends on if I'm working out, if I'm trying to get motivation to like grind, if I'm just chilling. Boris Brejcha. Yeah, Boris Brejcha would probably be the artist that I listen uh, to the most, and it would be he does like high tech minimal stuff.
Okay. What about a favorite movie?
Ooh, I mean, so too many to name, right? Clockwork Orange is really good. The Lobster is really good.
Okay, both disturbing.
Yeah, maybe I should like say something lighter, right?
No, I love that scene in The Lobster with the toaster.
But like, isn't it
Riley?
Yeah, I mean, there's like another disturbing movie that I really like.
What's that one where they go into the Amazon jungle and they find the monsters?
I don't know that one.
You'd love it. It's all about exploring.
Yeah, all right, I'll add one to the list.
I got to figure out what it was called. All right. Are you superstitious at all?
No, not in any serious way.
What do you mean? Like you have a couple small ones, or?
No, like there's like superstition is like so entangled in tradition, and in upbringing. Like I'll give you an example. So I don't know if it's like a Russian thing or if it's generally a thing, but like as a kid, I was told not to whistle inside because you'll whistle all your money away. If that doesn't sound familiar to you, then I'm sure it's just a Russian only thing.
I've never heard it, but I like it.
Yeah,
as somebody who struggles to whistle anyway.
So yeah, like I won't whistle inside just because like as a kid I was like, don't do that, you'll whistle all your money away. So I'll like not do stuff like that, but it's not like for any serious reason. It's just kind of zero effort. Why not?
Yeah.
And like what if, right?
What if? Well, not going to catch me whistling anymore. Most entertaining thing you've watched, read, or listened to during lockdown?
I feel like I've been so busy with poker during lockdown that there's just been zero time for entertainment. Like when the whole lockdown thing started, my girlfriend and I, the first thing we did, we went on Amazon and we bought a puzzle. It was like one of those like
one puzzle.
well, we bought two, and then we're like, okay, we'll finish these two, and then we'll get more as we get these finished. And It was actually a very entertaining puzzle. Or it's called like a gradient puzzle, and it's just a color wheel with like very
Oh,
slow
okay.
changes in color. So you really have to kind of look at the different shades and fit the pieces together. I like how you asked entertaining, and then this is where I go. Uh, but yeah, so when lockdown started, we're like, oh my god, we're gonna be so bored. We gotta do stuff to entertain ourselves. We gotta like catch up on Netflix, whatever. And then of course all the crazy online scheduling started happening. So I just feel like I've been super busy, and especially like during the first couple of months of lockdown when it was really strict. I was just at home grinding pretty much, and now that it's loosened up a bit, if I have time to not play poker, then I go do something outdoors. So actually, yeah, I don't have a good answer for you.
Yeah, well, maybe one day it'll rain and you can get to that second puzzle. Uh,
Yeah.
do you? What's your biggest pet peeve at the table, or the most annoying thing anybody can say or do?
I think being rude to dealers.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like if you're just rude to a dealer, I just automatically think you're an awful person.
Yeah, it's pretty clear cut.
It's like the same as if you're out and then like someone is rude to waiters for no reason. Like, that's like a pretty good I feel like that's a pretty good indication that they're maybe not a great person. And I feel like at the poker table, like if someone gets frustrated and like throws their cards at the dealer or says something nasty, I really don't like that.
Are there any Russian stereotypes about you that are true? Like, are you good at chess?
Um I'm I don't like it depends what you mean by good.
I bet you're better than most.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm better than most for sure, but I didn't really. I played pretty seriously. Well, I don't think I played seriously, but like I spent a lot of time playing chess up until I was like probably like 9 or 10, and I got pretty good, and then kind of stopped playing. And nowadays, I would probably be like I don't know, like a 1600 or something.
I don't even
Uh,
know what that means, so that automatically puts you better than me. That's good. Okay. Do you have a bold prediction for poker's future?
No, it's just yeah, it's
Does
just
that mean you think it'll be boring, or does that mean you just don't want to stick your neck out there?
it's just like one of those things that has so many variables. Like um, there's regulations. There's also how quickly sites can uh, roll out new variants of games or combat like issues that come with playing poker online. Uh, yeah, there's just like so many things working together that it's hard to predict anything. Like if you asked me if this would be the state of poker tournaments in 2020, like I would have laughed at you. Uh, because like right now on like a random Wednesday, I can probably get in like 50K in buy-ins or something, just like playing online poker.
That's
Uh,
right. You know what I just realized? Did you miss the first wave of online poker, or you just weren't there yet in your career?
I wasn't there yet. No, like I wasn't really. Uh, yeah, I wasn't playing too seriously
Yeah, so
during
this
that
is your
first
boom.
wave.
This is your first boom.
Yeah, but like I would have never predicted it. So who knows what will happen? I do think that at least as far as the high stakes MTT environment goes, it looks to be pretty healthy. People like playing high stakes tournaments, and I don't see an abrupt end to that. But outside of that, it's hard to make predictions.
All right, one more question, or two more, and then we're done here. Do you have, or you play the same, crew of people in these high rollers? Do you have a nemesis or somebody that you just can't beat or has held over you every time?
I don't think so. No nemesis. I think that there's people that it's really fun to win against, and mostly that tends to be my friends.
Okay,
Uh,
so They have nemesis against you.
Yeah, whereas like I'm just like a good friend trying to win, you know?
Yeah, you're the nemesis. The
Yeah.
nemesi?
Yeah, the
Nemesi?
nemesis. The nemesis.
Should really learn how to pronounce that word if I'm going to ask it. We end the podcast the same way every time with a question from the random question generator. Here we go. Have you ever been in a talent show? And if not, what would you have chosen as your talent?
I have not been in a talent show. Ooh, what would I choose as my talent?
You can't hunt on stage.
Well, that's what I was thinking, right? Like,
Do
I
you
was
know
like,
any bird calls?
I don't really know any bird calls.
Sorry, is that offensive to hunt? Is that like an offensive hunting question to ask?
No, it's not. Well, actually, no. I do have like uh, I do have a diaphragm call that's used for like calling turkeys, which I'm like okay at. It's just basically like a little thing that you put up to the top of your mouth, and it's got like a rubber reed, and you kind of push air against it.
Oh, this is
thing with your
equipment?
tongue. Yeah, it's like a little bit of equipment, and then you
I was
can.
going to ask you to do the noise.
Yeah. But yeah, you can like cluck like a turkey and make other various purring turkey sounds.
Mhm.
But like, yeah, I'm thinking, is there anything else that I would? Most of my talents, I'd need equipment or at least like some form of equipment, and to be outside and not something that I could do on stage.
Step one of this talent show. Everybody get up. We're going outside.
Yeah, I think
Down to the range.
like if there was a talent show where you just get dropped in the middle of nowhere with minimal equipment and have to survive, like I think I'd like crush that. But that's not how most talent shows work. So
Do you know those? Do you watch those shows on TV? The survival shows. What was it? Naked and Afraid. Is that one of them?
I know about Naked and Afraid. I haven't watched it. But yeah, especially growing up, where I guess when I was younger, I would watch those, and all kinds of like naturey shows. Like Les Strout was definitely like uh, one of my favorite people to watch when I was, I guess, in my teens.
Wow. So you should consider Survivor. They tend to like poker players.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, right?
If you're listening, Survivor, make the call. I think he'd do well on the show. You'd have to not tell him you're a professional poker player. They hate that. The show likes it, but the other cast members would vote you out instantly. Too suspicious.
Yeah, because they would just assume that I'm up to various tricks, right?
It's the same thing you would do. Take out the strongest link right away.
Yeah.
Anyway, Daniel, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me on. I had a lot of fun.
That's it. That is the show. I want to thank Daniel once again. I hope you enjoy the bracelet when it gets to you. If you want to check out Daniel on Twitter or on Instagram, you can do so at Dvoress. That's his last name with a D in front. If you want to play like Daniel, well, that's going to be a lot harder to do, but you can get started by watching his training videos at Run It Once. You can also follow us on Twitter at poker_stories or at cardplayermedia. Make sure you are subscribed to get more Poker Stories podcasts, and if you would be so kind, please do us a favor and leave a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app. Let us know you did it with an email to pokerstories@cardplayer.com, and we'll give you a big thank you that includes a free digital subscription to Card Player magazine. Thanks for listening.